Audio Jungle.
There's so many moves you want to run on Durant. I'm curious if it has a way to really get like big one-hit KOs, especially on something like that Rotom, which like we saw is a good candidate to Dynamax despite Gastron being out here. So for Nihal, once again, it's like how do you put yourself in a position where you have an end game where you can beat the Gastron. For Eduardo, it's can you create an end game where you knock out the main threats to Gastron and then win with Gastron against, you know, combination of like Rotom and Arcanine. And you know, the fact there's Snarl on Arcanine Nihal's then makes it tougher, I think, for Eduardo because Gastron just doesn't really do any damage.
Yeah, especially like even after a single Snarl, Gastrodon just starts limply earth powering away at things or scalding. And even now, Scald is not a safe move to choose now that we've seen Nihal reveal the Guts Conkeldurr on this team.
Right. And I have to wonder, you know, if you're expecting the same lead from Nihal in that last game with that Bisharp, really, what do you lead to counter the Bisharp? I think Durant is actually a potential option where, of course, it can just Dynamax and go for some really strong Max Quakes. And I think the one thing that, you know, Durant might be scared of is you don't want to come out and like face off Dynamax Rotom like and just Max Lightning, especially if you don't have a way to get the one-hit KO. So yeah, that might be why Eduardo's a little bit more hesitant to bring it, but I think there's certainly some room for it to come out. I think Gorga is probably pretty tough to come out into this matchup, you know, when you're going up against Bisharp, against potential Gengar. Togekiss, of course, does so much damage against it as well, but Eduardo could consider it, and Gengar actually comes out for Nihal's end.
Yeah, we're going to see Gengar in the
second. Oh, I love the adjustments from both ends here.
Gengar and Durant on the field. Durant though, will take the Intimidate from Arcanine. Is paired alongside the Gastron just in case the Rotom showed up, but Gengar and Durant on the field. These were, you know, when Sword and Shield first started, I would not have guessed this.
Oh, definitely not. And this is a really interesting dynamic, right? Because the Intimidate is really big against the Durant. And of course, now Gastron is actually probably in a better position to Dynamax. One thing that Nihal could consider is actually just Dynamaxing the Arcanine if you're expecting Durant to Dynamax and try to snipe it with like a Max Flare. I think that surely will survive like a Max Quake from -1 Durant right now. So Durant actually puts on a lot of offensive pressure against both Pokemon. I think like the question is then, do you Dynamax it? It's so risky to Dynamax a Durant in front of Arcanine Gengar, but if you're not Dynamaxing it, then what are your plays? I guess it's to maybe protect here or switch out. And yeah, there's the switch, just as you said. So Tyranitar is going to be able to break the Focus Sash here, which is most commonly the item, and on Gengar, and also does so much damage against both of these.
Yeah, this is a great matchup for Tyranitar to have the Arcanine and a Gengar in. Nihal will not allow that, though. Just catches the Tyranitar on the switch and again with Conkeldurr. So Nihal is making great use of his information, knows that Eduardo is trying to get that Tyranitar in, switching in the Conkeldurr to block it. Here comes the Earth Power onto Gengar, does bring it down to its Focus Sash, but because of the sand, will be able to get that knockout, which means that Nihal has a free switch in here. Potentially that Arcanine again, just to get another Intimidate off onto this Tyranitar.
That was a neat play from both ends there. I think Nihal kind of calling that, hey, Durant isn't that big of a threat. I think you're probably going to switch it out. Once again, gets Conkeldurr in as the Tyranitar comes in. Here's Bisharp now, so a lot of offensive presence right now, and Eduardo deciding not to go for the Dynamax there. So, you know, would have been able to take that Shadow Ball a little bit better, but I think one reason why you might not consider Dynamaxing is, one, you have Durant, so you might want to conserve that for a late game Dynamax, and two, you really don't want to like Max Quake into a potential Togekiss switch in.
Yeah, or even the Rotom Wash in the back.
Exactly.
There's plenty of opportunities for Nihal to find free switches or safe-ish switches for that Dynamax Durant. Eduardo probably choosing just to find a little bit more information about this team before going on the offensive with that Pokemon. But here is going to be our first Dynamax of Game 2. It is the Bisharp again. Nihal really prioritizing the Dynamax on that Bisharp.
Yeah, and changing it up a little bit, but I think a great Pokemon to Dynamax in this position, able to do a lot of damage, and still no Dynamax from Eduardo's end. You can see, I think, probably trying to stall out the Dynamax from Nihal's end and then try to maybe sweep, especially with that Durant in the back. And Mach Punch and a Tyranitar does so much damage.
Not quite enough to pick up the KO from full health, but deals so much damage. Activates the weakness policy here. Gastrodon protects this time around. Here comes the Steel Spike from Bisharp. Nihal correctly predicting that. Picks up the KO onto Tyranitar. That's free defense boost on Nihal's side, which is going to be a major player once this Durant comes back out.
Yeah, that's a super nice play. And so I think the tough thing about having Durant in the late game here is that you haven't knocked out the Arcanine, and Nihal made that great switch out turn 1, saying, I'm going to conserve this Arcanine specifically for Durant, which you're probably going to switch out. So it comes out here, but Nihal can just Psycho and Intimidate later on. You can, for example, switch out the Conkeldurr into Arcanine. One thing I'm curious about is I don't really know, this Bisharp does not look very invested. Yeah. If Durant has a way to hit the Bisharp for super effective, obviously often carries like Stomping Tantrum, but even sometimes a fighting type attack, could still knock out the Bisharp even through Intimidate. So we'll have to see just how much work Durant can put in. This feels like a time where maybe you'll want to consider Dynamaxing, and if it does, then it'll be able to do so much damage, and here's the Dynamax.
Yep. Durant going to Dynamax now in the face of the Conkeldurr, and the Bisharp adds a little bit of survivability in addition to turning all of its attacks into max moves, which crucially means that Durant's hustle ability is not going to drop their accuracy. Still get the boost, still get the attack boost, but you don't have to worry about the accuracy anymore. Bisharp goes for a max guard, afraid of damage coming out from Durant, but that's just a steel spike into Conkeldurr. Big damage, not quite enough to pick up the KO, but with a double target that just might be enough, and defense boosts onto that Gastrodon. Drain Punch from Conkeldurr connects with Durant, does a little bit of damage, will be able to heal up from the Drain Punch recovery. Earth Power from Gastrodon connects onto Conkeldurr, deals damage, no Snarl, not quite enough to pick up the KO, but wait! Tyranitar didn't get to deal much damage on its own, but the sand coming up big.
Yeah, nice play there by Eduardo, reading super heavily into the Protect on Bisharp and calls it perfectly. That play makes a lot of sense too. You cover a potential Arcanine switch, and if Arcanine switches in, yeah, Max Steel Spike doesn't do much damage, but you get that defense boost, and Bisharp probably isn't going to be able to knock you out. And then the Gastrodon's able to Earth Power. So I really, really like that play from Eduardo, and works out even better because Bisharp ended up going for Max Guard, so it doesn't get anything off there.
And here are the final two Pokemon for Nihal. It's the Arcanine and the Bisharp, which means that if Durant is packing the ability to fire off Max Quakes, that'll hit for super effective damage on both of these Pokemon, and there's nothing Nihal can do about it except for trying for more protects.
Yeah, Gastrodon in a great position right now against the Bisharp and the Arcanine. This is what I was talking about.
Soaking in buffs.
Exactly, and that single defense boost actually makes such a big difference against this Bisharp specifically. I'm not even sure like a Max Darkness and a Fire type attack from Arcanine will knock out Gastrodon, and I thought Gastrodon was so good for Eduardo earlier, and he's been able to put himself in a great position where now it just can maybe close out the game, and you still have to deal with Durant doing damage. Let's see if Max Quick gets this knockout. It does! It is so strong. Don't doubt the end. Intimidate.
Stupid damage.
Oh man, so well played by Eduardo, despite leading a Durant into Arcanine, still able to really pull this one out. Max Darkness will come out, but this probably won't get the KO onto the Gastrodon. Let's see.
Yeah, the defense boost is so big on Gastrodon. It hangs on with just 15 hit points left. Removes the special defense boost from the Max Quake, but Gastrodon doesn't mind. It's just all about that Max Steel Spike defense boost here as it recovers up and gets ready to wall Nihal, and this Durant and Gastrodon are ready to force a Game 3.
Wow, I love the adjustments here, and Nihal made some cool adjustments with the Gengar and the Arcanine lead as well, but I think you have to go back to the drawing board and look at how much utility you got out of a Gengar. What did Gengar do this game? They got a single Shadow Ball off in trade of getting knocked out.
Yeah.
So I'll see
it dealt like 60% damage to the Gastrodon.
Okay. But at the end, Durant just did so much work in this game, right? Able to give the Gastrodon the defense boost, able to just cleanly one-hit KO Arcanine despite the Intimidate, and then of course get the knockout. Yeah, he got 2.5 knockouts basically.